Thank you for joining us here today and welcome to the Premi Chats. I'm Fabiana Bacchini, Executive Director of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, CPBF. And I have here, join me live from Halifax and co-hosting here with me today, Leah Whitehead, a journalist and Premi parent. And CPBF is a charitable organization, and our mission is to empower families of premature babies through support and education. This Premi Chat series is one of the many initiatives we have to bring information for NICU families and healthcare professionals. Here every Friday, we talk with experts, researchers, and parents who share with us their knowledge and experience. Also on our website, canadianpremis.org, parents will find all kinds of resources and support. And one of our programs is the Parent Care Program. CPBF is offering 4 free therapy sessions for families who are currently in the NICU up to 3 years post-discharge. All the information is on our webpage, canadianpremis.org. And Leah, let's talk about our session today.
I can't tell you how excited I am. We are thrilled to have a very special guest with us today, Premi parent Annie Janvier, and she's also a neonatologist, and she's joining us live from Montreal today. And she has written, I have to tell you, an amazing book, and it bravely outlines her experience, and it also tells the stories of courageous families in NICU. And it's a book about patience, becoming a parent, resilience, and transformation. Dr. Annie Janvier is a professor of pediatrics and clinical ethics at the University of Montreal. She is a neonatologist and clinical ethicist at the St. Justine University Health Center. She co-directs the master's and PhD programs in clinical ethics at the University of Montreal. And she does some incredible research looking at bioethics, family values, outcomes after a NICU stay, and how to improve communication in NICU. And she joins us today, and I can't wait to get into this conversation because we were talking just briefly ahead of time about how her book has brought both me and Fabiana to tears, I have to say, on several occasions. It's so relatable. And so I'm excited to talk to both of you today and have this conversation.
Yes,
thank you for inviting me.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. Dr. Janvier, why did you write this book?
I guess I was going to say the short story, but we have got an hour. So I delivered Violette. She was my second child. My first child, the bed rest, I still had the cervix. That didn't work very well. So the second child, it was actually so difficult. And although I was a neonatologist and taking care of parent kangaroo care, parent stuff in the NICU, I was like the parent person already, doing a PhD in ethics. I had absolutely no clue of how to be the mom of Violette. And I was already a mom, so I can't even imagine those who go through the NICU as their first experience parenting. And I guess the way to get the crap out of my system was to write to my computer, which, to be honest, I actually didn't remember. Just to tell you how, well, you know, because you're parents, but how deeply traumatizing and shocking some of the events are. There's a lot of things we don't remember, maybe as a protective mechanism. So when I left McGill to go to St. Justine in 2009, so that was like 4 years after Violette was born, I was going through my computer to empty the stuff, transfer it to a USB key, and I fell in a folder called Toxic Shit. Really, that's the name, in capital letters. And I'm like, geez, what's that thing? Is it about administrators or, you know? So I went into the folder and, oh my God, I was like reading all these Word documents that were so intense. Some of them were super filthy and vulgar, and it only had swear words or incomprehensible, like drivel. But other things were very powerful. And I thought, geez, you know, I think this could be helpful for some families in the unit, because after I had Violette, I would start to speak to parents in the NICU differently instead of saying you'll love the kangaroo care, which I hated when Violette was unstable, I told some moms, you know, kangaroo care can be scary. And some moms find it, you know, they don't find they can bond at first, and others it's immediate bonding. It's normal to feel both ways, but you know, at some point you'll feel like a parent. And I realized that about half the moms were like, yes, I don't feel like a mom. Like, I don't feel like I love my baby, like the same way I had felt. And to be honest, I had never read that. I'd read in the bonding, there's a literature, psychological literature about bonding, which I had read, but that so many parents in the NICU have this problem of so much guilt. So you're kind of unworthy. So you're supposed to suffer. So like all the things we imagine, I'm not saying we are supposed to suffer, but the feelings of being an inappropriate mom, not being a mom, not being worthy to be there, the guilt, all of these things that are not very good for us mothers were in my head and my heart. And I'd never been have even like received education about this. And there's many things that I was doing that was probably harming, saying, oh, you will love it. Moms love kangaroo care, that I did in the past, that when you don't love it, you feel even more inappropriate and guilty being that parent that's not supposed to be there. So I started using things that I've read in my Word documents, because sometimes I'm super mad. I'm like, I don't want to be the doctor that makes me feel like other women mad. So, and speaking about this to Jean-François Chicoine, he's the doctor of my third child who's adopted, who's written books. At some point, he's like, Annie, you use all these things and you should publish them. So I sent him this stuff and he's like, geez, this is like great stuff. And then we started speaking to Québec Amérique, who's the biggest publisher in Quebec, about publishing it in French. But also I didn't want it to be just my story, because I don't want people to think I took the right decisions, or, you know, the outcome of Violette depends on us, Keith and I, being neonatologists, and that didn't seem fair because some babies are disabled, some others have die. There's like stories that are really not like ours. So I connected with some families that I remember and shaped the doctor I am and taught me things, important things. And most of them wanted their name exactly said in the book and their stories. So I used the stories of these different parents and families that I had met, which taught me, parents have taught me so much on how to speak to families in the book. So there's a variation of kids who do well, kids who die, kids who do well but have disabilities, parents with different insights about how they face uncertainty and stress. So that's how it came to be the French book. And then it's very tough to publish in English. It's not the same model at all. And University of Toronto Press was great to accept the publication. It's really not like in French, because there's scientific articles in it. So it's a lot more academic. So the French book, for those who read French, is a lot more raw, has more a higher fuck density with swear words. There's about 10% as much fucks in the English version than the French version. And there's more academic articles that are really about applying communication. It's actually a lot more pure and nice and Anglophone, the Anglophone version, than the French version. So then the English version is slightly different, more academic, more towards clinicians, but most parents that have read the book found it helpful and accessible. I mean, it's not, if you could read it and understand, and your family's in the NICU, so it's not meant to be read by philosophers who, with a lot of obscure concepts. This was a long answer.
It was a great answer. I think too, like you gave a little, I don't want to say warning, but at the beginning, just about how it can be too raw for families who are currently in NICU to read.
Yeah.
So the majority of people that you hear from about the book, are they people who are post NICU? Are they those families who you generally
It's
hear
very
from?
weird because this warning is not in the French version because you know, parents are all different. I mean, the book is about parents being all different, and they share, you know, many things too in the NICU. So I'd say about half the parents find it so relieving to actually say, oh, I'm not crazy. These emotions are normal, like acknowledging the emotions of being mad and enraged and why is this happening to me, and feeling guilty. It's not normal to feel guilty, and I speak about it in the book, but you're not crazy to feel that, and to validate that you're feeling that, and that some emotions like guilt won't take you anywhere. So a lot of moms too, and the swear words more in the French version, are liberating because, you know, the NICU is very estrogenic, like pumping milk, very quiet, and there's no at all way to get, there's no punching bag or like it's really not like some other places in medicine that are more quote unquote masculine, where there's more raw energy. And so some parents like say, you know, the fucking apneas of shit, and you know, but actually it's like if you can't say that in the NICU, you have to go home to say it. So some families, about, I guess, a bit more than half, say this is super helpful because I feel that way and it's normal, and this is what I should do with the guilt and other things. And others, they start reading it and they're like, geez, this is way too emotional. Like I'm feeling that and it's not great. So I tell them now, when we lend it at Saint Justine at the hospital, there's books to lend to parents. So most parents try most. Some parents are not into reading books, which is great. They do other things. That's why I've started doing videos. But those who start reading the book actually have the label that we put in fluorescent first to say, if it's too tough, go to the lists at the end. Go to the lists at the end. So it's, yeah, I find like parents are different. Like some, it actually helps them, and others they're like, no, I won't do this now, I'll do this later.
Right. So when you found your toxic folder in your computer and you're going through them, were you surprised by some of your thoughts, things that you wrote, things that you felt during that NICU time? Because as the years pass by, I felt that some of the memories fade away. I go back to my journal sometimes and I remember. Also, it gives me a different perspective of how far I've come. So when you read your entries to your computer, how did you feel? And was it any surprise elements or revelation to you about that time?
Well, I had felt those things, but the surprise was that there was a folder. Like I didn't remember writing this stuff. So I'm like, oh, geez, you know, but that teaches you a lot as an ethicist, like all these informed consent forms of 20 pages. I don't actually remember signing them. I don't remember signing for transfusions. I don't remember signing for many things. Like it's just bizarre. And I don't remember writing that. So that was the first revelation. And then there's themes that came, and I had already changed the way I speak to parents. Like I spoke now about guilt. As soon as I see a mom, there's nothing you could have done to prevent this, which is 99% true. Even for moms who, you know, the last time I was on service, the baby had neck. No, it's not your milk. No, it's not what you're eating. No, it's not because you had a bug on you and you took him. No, it's not because. So it's important to say every time there's nothing you could have done to prevent this. This is just, you know, nature's a bitch and that's what happens. So guilt was so paralyzing to me, and it's not like that for all the parents. So that's why I always use some parents feel that they could have done something to prevent what's going on, and others don't. And usually you see who's like that. So there wasn't revelations because I had experienced it, but then I found the topics Jean-François told me, like, read through it again and see what you think could help other physicians or families, and that's when I found guilt and what can empower families and what are tricks families told me. Because then afterwards I started asking families, what is most toxic in people around you, or what did people around you do that helped you, or what do clinicians do, and that's in my research, that is harmful to you, and what's helpful. So to actually use examples of what we can do and not.
I kind of hear, and I heard in your book and hear it coming out as a theme now too, like that there's kind of an invisible parenting standard that is kind of put on parents. And I think sometimes when people don't meet that expectation, and I don't even know exactly what that expectation is, but then families get labeled or can be labeled by healthcare side of things. And how do we get around that? How do you almost unteach that or dispel it? I don't know what the words are, but
you're totally right. And we just wrote an article, The Ethics of Family Integrated Care. If you look on PubMed, you'll find it. And I'm a proponent, like I'm pro family integrated care, but the way it's being done in a rigid fashion in many places is very dangerous. And, just an example, like I'm a neonatologist, so I could have intubated my daughter, and I'm not scared of babies. That's my job. Mm-hmm. But I really did not like kangaroo care for the first, when she was on high frequency, unstable, bradycarding. And to be honest, the evidence for 23, 24 weekers is not like overwhelming either. It's in higher gestation. So I also knew that as empiric data. But the expectation is that you'll love it. All the nurses tell you that. It's this super festival of love, and then you bond and it makes your milk go, and like, oh my God, the bubble of love. And the thing is that I thought that as a neonatologist, I actually said that to families and moms, you will love it. So I hated it so much. I came at change of shifts for 3 weeks to make sure that the nurses wouldn't be free and the RTs wouldn't be free to give me my baby. So me, a neonatologist, 7:30, 3:30, 11:30. So if you come at those times for an hour, you're sure not to be exposed to kangaroo care, and it's not your fault. And then it shows that I came and that I engaged with people, and I engaged with 2 shifts. So I engaged 6 times, the shift that finishes, the shift that comes, so I can show I'm a good parent, but I don't have to go through kangaroo care. And I thought it was very sad because there's a lot of things we do like this. Like I see a lot of QI incentives. At the end of these 6 months, 80% of parents will present at rounds. That's the new fashion, that the parent presents their baby. But geez, there's parents who were afraid to present a poem through high school, like that needed like breathing exercises. And then you're expecting that parent who doesn't speak English very well or French, or doesn't feel good in front, has like phobia of speaking in front of people, or just wants to be left on their own, or is sad, or is not in a good place, or just doesn't want to do it, exposed to this is the parent standard, or going to parent meetings, or so there's a lot of things we try to do for parents that can inadvertently harm parents, being there during resuscitations. So we asked our parents in our unit, half of them wanted to be there at resuscitation. But then how do you ask that? Do you say, do you want Mrs. Whitehead, do you want information on how the respirator works? So you don't say no, Can you actually say no? If you say no, well, she doesn't want information on her baby. So actually, as a parent, you can't say no, or if you say no, you feel really bad. So, and then doctors say, oh, the mom doesn't remember how the respirator works. We've told her 3 times. She's just not interested, but she can't say she's not interested. So it's the way to ask parents, like, some parents want to know what all these numbers are and how it works and the tidal volumes. And other parents are like, that's your stuff. Like, I'm just going to focus on my baby. What kind of parent are you? And that's the same thing for, do you want to be in the room? Some parents want to be there. Some other parents want to leave. What kind of parent are you? And to use that, some parents adore kangaroo care right away. And some are really stressed and don't feel the bonding right away, but we will be there for you to help you develop this. Is, I think, the some parents, other parents is what have helped me the most through this. But you're right, Leah, it's very, very, I think, scary right now, all the standards that are there for almost what is a good parent. And you feel already like, at least I felt like an unworthy parent who had a slack cervix, who couldn't do her job. And then the incubator and nurses were doing my mom's job. So I felt so inadequate that putting on top of that other inadequacies, like feeding my child. Like, I can insert the nasogastric tube and I can pump through it and I can do the LP. I mean, I would have been the perfect parent integrated care. I could have done everything. I could have even intubated. But that's not what a parent does for me. That's what a doctor does. And of course, if my kid had gone home on tube feeds, I would have learned it. But for me, a parent doesn't give tube feeds. But then that was the expectation in our unit. Do you want to give the tube feed? I'm like, no, I don't want to. It's not that I can't. I'm not scared. It's just not what a parent does. So I think we have to be very wary of looking at how FI care can actually harm parents. It will probably empower those who didn't need much empowerment. But those who are more fragile or less there or less able to come, or perhaps not fluent in the language where the hospital is, can actually be harmed by a rigid FI care routine.
Right. Dr. Janvier, in your book, you talk a lot about, different parents, acknowledge that the parents are all different. And I feel in all that you do in your work, we always consult parents, right? When I look at your research, there's always parents on your research. Like, you value the parent's voice. So was this always like that for you, or your experience at NICU put you more into bringing parents and being everybody at the table together?
Well, I was already like this, but I guess more so after, but I had, my unfortunate healthcare experience of, I had cancer before I had Violette, and my dad passed away when I was young of cancer. So we went through a lot of things in the healthcare system. So I was already very attuned to how the healthcare system could be inadequate, caring for families, or not listening exactly to what was important, or just asking the question, what scares you the most? And I remember I was asked that question, and that I found it very helpful, because when you speak about what scares you the most, then you're able to speak about what the doctor wants you to speak about, because then the paralysis of thinking about the most scary thing. But it changed me in terms of a lot of misconceptions I had, and what Leah's talking about, and not preconceptions of a good parent, but what I thought a parent may like in the unit. I thought I was really not the perfect NICU parent, that shows up, inquires about things. I'm like, don't tell me the apneas, don't tell me the grams, don't tell me it can go wrong. Please don't tell me it's every 1 day at a time, because I'm going to shoot myself. So all the things that I had told people, I'm like, oh no, like informing of like all the data transfer is so not what parents need. It's one of the things we need to be informed and educated about technology, but it's really not enough.
Could part of that have been because you understood those numbers so well? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around. I was the parent who always wanted to know, were there apneas? How bad were they? What kind of intervention? Because I was one of the ones who was obsessed with the oxygen, and I never wanted it. I didn't want too much, didn't want too little. That was kind of my, like, so I wanted to know, where's that knob on the oxygen, and why did you bump her up? But do you think because you had such, I don't know, a knowledge of those numbers, that's why you didn't want them? Or
Well, I think it's about control too. Like
yes,
if you understand, you know what's going on. So but I think that then again, the parents are very different. There's the category of parent that says things will go fine, like that are more fatalistic, taking the life as it is. Me, I'm a control freak, so I wasn't taking the life as it is at all.
yeah.
So, but then I knew the knobs and everything, but it doesn't give you any control. So, and I think it helps many parents to know, and for sure, I think if I had known nothing, I would have wanted to know, why is it ringing when it's too high and too low?
Right.
It makes no sense. Like it's always ringing. So it still always rings. But then to have some information. So I think information gives you a part of control, but also accepting that you don't have control is another part of control that I found out in the NICU. And I think I've put it in my book. One of the dads that was from Australia said it makes me think about rip currents and the way we were taught to approach them. You need to still like tread the water, not to drown, but you let yourself go where it takes you. Because if you fight it, you're just going to like totally drown. So that made me like, I need to do little movements, but I can't control. I can control that I'm pumping my milk for her not to have neck, but then I pump my milk. They don't give her antibiotics. They do all they have to do, but she may still have neck. I mean, there's so much uncertainty. And this goes a lot in the prenatal counseling literature. I really thought that before having Violette, if you knew the information, you could decide. But so I had wrote the parent information sheet. I knew the information. I mean, I'm the one who spoke about it at the conferences with Keith. So, but we didn't know what to do. So it's really a decision with your heart to it. It's really not just the prefrontal cortex that decides. It's the primitive brain. And when doctors speak about reorienting care or stopping life intensive technologies, information is not, you need some information, but then it's a lot more stuff that you need, like decisional regret. What will happen to my other kids? What's going to happen with my family, my job, like all these things that we are researching right now with the Parent Voice project, that parents want to know, what do other families do? And the only answer we have is like terrible stuff for neonatologists. We do the prenatal consult with a big list of all the bad things that can happen to babies. And it's really not the way to do it. There's a lot more things that go into that. So I think I don't know if it answered your question. I think I had all the information, but felt a total lack of control and how to regain this control. Some parents want information, but then the nurses help so much. The nurses are amazing into, creating it in a little routine. You can control that. You come, you sing the song, you do the kangaroo, you pump your milk, you give the bath. So there's actually things then that we can control and say, okay, this is the structure of my day. It's not totally like, that there's things that need and can be done. So regaining some kind of control is important.
So, Dr. Janvier, you talk a lot in your book about approaching parents with difficult conversations, end-of-life conversations, and you have incredible articles on the book that I know they're also on your website. I'm going to share them here. And I think that's a part of your work that I love the most, the way you actually consult parents, your perceptions and your visions on how parents need more than the numbers and the bad statistics that scare us so much, but really what means to have a child with disability, what means to end of life, and how you're going to live with that decision for the rest of your life. So you talk a lot about that in your book and also in your articles. I know you do a lot of research with the Parents' Voice Project on that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because I think this is one conversation that happen with parents in the NICUs that we never forget. Never, ever we forget that decision where the doctor was sitting, what clothes the doctor was wearing, when you're having that conversation that alter our lives forever. And you have done so much work on that, and you're advocating for changing the way the conversations are created with the families. So I want you to share with us here today, for all the healthcare professionals listening to us, how can they better do this job, or counseling families, or starting those difficult conversations?
Well, by listening to families. And Fabiana, you taught me a lot too. Like we met like personally face to face twice, and just listening to you, every parent has a recommendation for doctors that we can apply. And I think it's applying those. What's interesting is the doctors who are the best, when you ask them, and that's why I do my empiric research. So when I do my communication research, and then we identify the 4 top communicators, or 5, I go see the 5 top communicators and I say, okay, you are identified as a top communicator. What do you do? And I'm just myself. Okay, great. So what does yourself do practically? Well, I just speak to families. Okay, so what do you say? Well, I just say what I say normally. And I'm like, okay, great. This is not going to go far enough. So, so I actually doing a videotape of these conversations, and then analyzing what was well done, asking parents, look at these videos, name me like reproducible behaviors, such as sitting on a chair, knowing the name of the child, and asking the parents, tell me about, about Violette, or about Sam, about Trish. How do you find Trish today? And you may have, well, I don't know, what about you? And that's, that's the mom or the dad saying, look, I'm not interested to just, speak about all these things. And others will, blah, 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 I'm really concerned. What are you concerned about? And if they're concerned about, sometimes it's a 32-weeker and the mom's concerned about the kid dying and the baby's on a CPAP of no oxygen, like no extra oxygen, and full feeds, no IV. I'm like, geez, nobody told you that. So we don't know what people are concerned until we ask them. And sometimes just doing rounds, this is what we're going to do. We don't listen to the concern. So we finish rounds, the baby's doing great, and the parent's still feeling that the baby may die. Or in the prenatal consults, some dads, their biggest concerns is the mom. Is my partner going to die? They're speaking about all these things, preeclampsia. So that asking people like, how do you find Trish, and what are your concerns, if they don't say anything with how they find. And some parents, other parents, do you want a lot of information or just the big picture? I think for decisions, important decisions, or even not important, some parents are not into taking decisions. But it's important to say that. Some parents want the information so they can decide. Other parents want to decide together as a team. And other parents want recommendations. What kind of parent, how do you approach life? And I mean, it's weird that we go to the restaurant and if we say, what do you suggest? And they'll say, well, are you a meat or a fish person or vegetable? You say, well, okay, I'm a vegetarian, or I'd like a steak. Okay, I'd recommend this one. How do you want it cooked? Rare. Like, we have an exchange, but we don't go to the menu and they say, okay, this one, if you they go, they don't do what we do, but my accountant's the same. Like, I don't want anything to do. Don't tell me anything. Just give me the bill. Do your best. I want to save money. But like, people are not all like that. Some of the people I know, my brother will ask a detailed account about what's the car, the same thing. Just repair the car, change the tires. I don't need you to explain me. You're going to raise the car and then there's a risk of perforating underneath. We'll speak about it, So we're like this, I think, in life. But it seems very bizarre that as clinicians, we can't adapt to families. So in the articles, we have articles about this that are more systematic, because it's not just like exchanging and shooting the shit with families. Some people are like, oh, there's no structure, so it's better to take the decision aid. But there is a structure of sitting down, of introducing ourselves in words that parents understand, of knowing the name of the baby or asking, prenatally is their name, how much information they want. What scares them the most is what concerns them or what scares them the most. Who would they find helpful for us to speak to, how they decide. And usually when you went through these 6-7 steps, the family quite well, and that you can tell them you may change the way you take decisions in the future. Because at first, some families are like, decide everything for me. And then after a month and a half, they're like, hey, I feel like I can take decisions with you. And some get out of the unit and they're like, I know what to do, and that's great. And others start by being very like, I know everything I have to do, and saying, geez, I just want recommendations. I'm exhausted at the end of the hospitalization. And that's fine too. But if we don't ask families and we assume they want to decide, it gets dangerous for everybody. It's not interesting for families.
You talk a lot about professional boundaries. And I find this topic so interesting because, I mean, you hit the nail on the head when I heard you talking about it, about how like professional boundaries are preached everywhere. And that, I don't know, like there's this fear of relationship within the health care system. But you go for it. You're open-hearted and you make connections and relationships with families. And why do you think it's important to do that?
Well, I couldn't do my job if I couldn't have relationships with families. I mean, that's so gratifying and nourishing to me. I mean, it's important as a person. And it's interesting why people are they try to structure clinician-parent boundaries. And now I call it the therapeutic space. Many people say that. It used to be the therapeutic borders. More and more it's therapeutic space that is said, because it can be very different from one person to the other and one circumstance to the other, is to protect families so that, doctors don't go badgering in their personal lives and try to friend them on Facebook, and
Right.
to protect physicians too, against, legal allegations or burnout. Like if you friend all the parents that you see in the 1,000 admissions, you're unable to do any work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and that's when I teach residents, it's something reflective. So I can sit down next to a mom and take her in my arms if it's a hard time for her in the unit. But to some degree with the dads, less. But, if I was treating patients in psychiatry, adolescents, I'm not sure I would do that. Or I think there's certain times, or if sometimes I've lied down on the bed next to the mom in the unit who's just so upset because it's not going well. If I was a male, I wouldn't do that. It wouldn't feel appropriate. And I mean, I don't go for supper with all the families in the unit, but I actually, when kids are discharged, I will friend parents. But I can understand, a doctor who follows a kid for 18 years cannot friend all his families. So there's a big difference, I think, being a neonatologist and being another doctor and being the person you are. So, for example, the example I give to the residents, do you go to funerals? Were you asked to go to funerals? What do you say? And how do you refuse? Like, if some families say, can we take a picture with you? What do you say? They all say yes. So then they say, well, we'll post it on Facebook. And they're like, oh, I don't like to have my picture on Facebook. I don't want to be out there. So you're like, okay, well, tell them. Like, you can have a conversation about this, or you can think about it, because a lot haven't thought about it. So they would refuse a parent trying to friend them. So more units have, universities, hospitals have a code of behavior that you are not supposed to accept this. We don't, where we have a very reflective code of behavior, like that we're supposed to think about it. But I told the residents, think about that. Maybe you could friend the parents that a baby died and he's not your patient, and they can teach you things. And you can reach out to this family. You knew their kid. You can speak about their kid. Like, you're one of the people who was part of their baby's life, more than a lot of other people in their lives. And the parents, in my research, really find it therapeutic to speak to a clinician, and they can teach you things, what you could have done better, what you did right, so you can improve how you are with these families. So they're like, yes, it's true. Like, this is an exception. A baby, like, they're not in my practice anymore. So I think we have to at least speak about these topics and not just say, this is wrong, this is right, because a lot of things can be different for different people at different stages in their career too.
Absolutely. And there are a few parts on your book that you actually acknowledge those families that taught you lessons, and you have a beautiful letter to Pamela's parents that I talked to Lee about it, and we both cried because it's such a beautiful, heartfelt story, and the way you reached out to them. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going with that.
No, but it's true.
You talk about how all those families helped you to make yourself a better, more understanding doctor. And also you talk about the incredible power of peer support throughout your book with other parents who were taking care of the babies before, and then you saw yourself at the same NICU at the same time as they were, just a few weeks later when Violet was born. And you talk about this peer support. So is it something that you still encourage within the unit? And how do the parents relate to you when if you share the story that you're also a preemie parent when you come as a clinician?
I usually don't share it, like, to say I was in your situation. Many of them find out, of course, because there's, they can read a book and it's written by me and I have the same name as the doctor that's on service. Some still don't, haven't seen or read or said, no, I can't read right now. It's too, so they haven't. So I don't share it necessarily in the unit. And sometimes I share it to moms who find it particularly difficult, such as, breastfeeding is not working. And usually the joke I do is, like, they know I'm a preemie mom, and I say my third time at breastfeeding was the best because I adopted and I didn't need to do that. So then they laugh because, it's just, that, like, it's so tough in the NICU that sometimes you have to take it with humor. It's not easy, and it's hard to pump your milk and give your milk. It's actually even hard to breastfeed a kid who's born term. So having compassion with yourself is very important. And it seems we always think we're not enough when we're parents in the unit.
So true. Leah, any question or?
You should not ask me that because I could talk all afternoon. I want to know how Violette reacted. I'm assuming she's read your book.
Yeah, so that was one of the other things. I couldn't publish the book without Violette thinking it was okay, because it's her story. And, you know, there's part of the story where I say I didn't find her beautiful. There's a part where we're stopping life-sustaining interventions for her, and we thought, you know, she's better off dead, basically. And I was ready to modify the book, or actually not even publish it, or take a lot of parts out if she would have been not happy with that. So Violette was about 10 when the book was published, and she always liked books. So we read it together. And I checked every time, how do you find this? Do you find this is useful? And, you know, she learned about people that took care of her, and, you know, how tough it was for her and for us. At some point, after reading a chapter, like the chapter about the 19th of June, she's like, "Oh, Mom," like we closed the book. I'm like, "What? This is like, I'm so happy I'm me." I'm like, "Well, of course, we're all happy you're there and you're you." No, I'm happy I'm me because I know I don't die at the end. I know the end of the book is that I'm alive. I'm like, okay. So I guess there's a thriller aspect to it. So then she actually, she was like, okay. I mean, she was 10. So then people can say informed consent at 10 is limited, but she was okay with publishing the book. And she's actually very proud, like when I put a picture in my presentation about her little foot, or a picture of Redam, you know, who published pictures of preemies holding their picture when they were ex-preemies, when they were small. So she actually likes that. But I'm not sure all my kids, like my third kid who's adopted, like some kids are obsessed with their country of origin, and he's interested, but he's shy about, he's not like, do you want to speak about, no, I don't need to speak about this. So I'm not sure, because, you know, I need to write a book now about my 3 kids because they're jealous because only Violette has her book. But I'm not sure if I wrote a book about him, it would be about his birth that we don't know much about, or his adoption. It would be about other things, because kids are all different in how they approach their roots or what happened in the healthcare system. But Violette is very ready to go out there and speak about her experience and things.
Wow, that is amazing. So when the book was about to come public, were you nervous of being so vulnerable? Because your book, I have it here with me, and I have all these pages marked that I had to go back to, because you share it is raw, right? It's an honest recollection and recount of all your experiences in the NICU. Or how were your feelings at the moment? Okay, this is going out. People are going to read about me and know me more intimately, whether your colleagues, your co-fellow researchers, and your community in general.
Well, while I was writing it, I was, you know, I had to think about this. And I asked actually, most parents want their kids named as their name and their story. People don't want to be anonymous. So I asked the doctors, is it okay if I put your real name? Or do you want it changed? And I've written, like most people wanted their real name, or accepted it was their real name. So that was that too. Like, I thought, you know, the nurses will read this. My first thought was, I hope the nurses don't feel like they've let me down, because the nurses are just so important, so amazing, life savers in the unit. And they really helped me. And I'm not sure they could have prevented so much of what I experienced, because it was difficult. So that was one of the thoughts, that I hope that the nurses wouldn't think, oh my God, what did you go through? Then there was, of course, in our loved ones, those who are absent, I don't speak about them individually, but of course, if they read the book, maybe they didn't because they were absent. They realized that they weren't there. So I thought about this, like, is this unfair and too difficult for those that are around me that didn't show up? Because we all have experienced that, of thinking who would show up when it was important, and then many people too that we weren't expecting to show up just came forth. And so that was another thought when I wrote. But then there's all, I speak about sex and contraception and personal things that are very intense. The thing is, then either I was going to speak about it or not. And I think it's important, like, for example, when I was in the delivery room thinking, well, I've got an incompetent cervix, so they call it, and I nearly delivered at 23 weeks. Then again, I'm here at 23 weeks. So if she dies next year, I'll be asked the same question. So Violette is like, you can't have a better model. And then you feel really bad about thinking how replaceable your baby that you have right now is. But there's some moms who think about this that are infertile and it's their last try. And there's all these guilty thoughts that you don't express with clinicians, that I thought that, if I am to put myself out there to help people and to normalize emotions, I can't say only the cute emotions that make me look good. Like, there's a lot of emotions and things I thought that some parents may say, oh, geez, she's thought about this. But then it may help others. So yeah, there's things about, like, poor Keith, people know he has a vasectomy now. So, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but like, oh, great. So now the whole world will know. Like, Keith, that's good. Like, more dads should do that. Like, it shows you're a modern man. So there's things like this that also were like personal information about our family.
Right.
But,
Okay, it's a question here from Christelle. Thank you for joining us. Could you speak about the transition from being a NICU parent back to being a role as a healthcare worker on the unit?
So thanks, Christelle, for that question. For me, it's weird. It wasn't too difficult. I felt like much better to do this. For Keith, it was terrifying. It was really terrible. And I think he did have PTSD. I mean, Keith, when there's a baby who dies in the unit, it's terrible. Like, he comes home, we were already like this as clinicians, of being, having our job having an impact on our lives. But now it's just, the kids are like, oh no, a baby died. We love you. Wow. So, the whole feeling of, this could have happened to us, is a lot stronger for Keith. For me, the times where I actually cry is when moms feel so guilty. Like that, I remember being in the OR with like the fluorescent lights and thinking, how can I do this to my baby? And hearing moms say this, it like gives me not necessarily flashbacks, but I feel so terrible for them. And I remember the worst times of my life. So I can't say it's difficult, but it has way more of an impact. Like, my hairs will stand up than other clinicians, in the unit with me.
Oh, absolutely. So it's almost 2:00 in Eastern Ontario, Eastern time. So thank you, Dr. Annie Janvier, so much for being with us today. I wanted to just wrap it up by asking you what is your take-home message for all your colleagues in neonatology?
Geez, one message. I guess to have flexible care standards or protocols in your unit for visitors, for visiting time, for how you interact with families, and not what Leah was saying, there's not a perfect parent spreadsheet that like parents need to check all the boxes, like come every day, do kangaroo every day. I think parents are all different and they will be helped in many different ways that you can help them if you engage with them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Janvier. I hope you do come back. We have so much more to talk about. I really want to talk up to you in another occasion about all your research projects in outcomes specifically, because you have a lot of important information to share. But for today, thank you so much for being here. This hour flew by, and we're so grateful to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to all of you watching us live today on our YouTube channel, Facebook, or Twitter, thank you for joining us here today. Leah and I are very grateful to have you joining us on Fridays. And the video of today's session and all the videos of our live series are available on the CPBF website, which is right here, thecanadianpremise.org. And I want to thank our sponsor, AstraZeneca, for their ongoing support of our education sessions. And we are a charitable organization, and we believe that through support and education, we can empower families, ensuring they are ready to care for their babies. Please visit our website, consider making a donation. Together, we can create a brighter future for all our families. And we'll see you again next Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you.